In this demonstration video, I'm going to walk through running the flash flood recommender to issue a convective flash flood warning. So I have a flash flooding event here in late May in the Northeast. I'm at the LWX CWA. And if I just show you what's happened over the last few hours, we've got this line of storms near Ellicott City to Baltimore that has, if I step forward in time, we see that this is kind of back building. If you see, it's nearly stationary, and this other line of storms is coming in from the northwest. So really, I've got back building storms and another round of storms moving into this area. So I'm going to want to consider a flash flood warning in this circumstance, and the flash flood recommender is going to be an FFmpeg based recommender. So the starting point is going to be the forecaster has to look at FFmpeg to choose what thresholds in FFmpeg do I want for my flash flood warning to retrieve a polygon for. So for those who are not fluent in FFmpeg, there's a number of different sources to choose from in FFmpeg. There's individual precip sources for each radar is going to have a legacy DHR and a dual pole DPR single source precip source. There's also mosaics in FFmpeg. There's a dual pole mosaic under HPE and a bias corrected dual pole mosaic under BHPE. And then there's MRMS is another precip source, which I'm going to choose to use MRMS in this circumstance after looking at the precip sources and assessing that's the source of the day that I'd like to use. But the first step is in using FFmpeg to assess which precip source you want to use, and then you load it from the menu. So here's my FFmpeg table that has all the basins in it, as well as the precipitation amounts for different durations that I specify. In this instance, it's a 1 hour duration. I can go ahead and let me toggle off the reflectivity and just show you what FFmpeg is displaying for. This is the ratio product. I can look at QPE, ratio, and difference. That's the radar estimated QPE, and the ratio is QPE to RFC flash flood guidance ratio, and then the difference is the difference between QPE and the RFC flash flood guidance by default. So I have a 1 hour duration specified here, and we see everywhere that's in purple is going to be 100%, meaning I have more QPE than the flash flood guidance. So my ratio is 100% or greater in the purple areas, indicating a flash flood threat where my QPE has exceeded guidance. So we see I have a 1 hour duration footprint, but also there's been some training storms in there. So if we look at some longer durations and compare 3 hour QPE to 3 hour flash flood guidance, we see that there's a much bigger footprint in the 3 hour duration as we would expect. And then I can take that all the way to 6 hours, which is going to push it to the limit for my archive case, because I've got this gap here, 3 hours. It's just an artifact for my archive case. But at least I've looked at the data, and most of the precip has fallen in the last 3 hours in the area that I'm most concerned about. So in the old days with WarnGen, we would just draw a polygon around the rough area that's exceeded flash flood guidance, tweak it a bit. It's going to be similar in hazard services, but we have the option of actually using the recommender to do that. So maybe I'll just go to show you first how easy it is. The drawing tools are so simple that it's really easiest to just look at your purple areas where you've exceeded flash flood guidance, and then close that off. Go to your type and go to FFW convective, and then go on with your flash flood warning. So that's so easy to do in hazard services. I think that's going to be kind of the standard to beat. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this and show you what the flash flood recommender can do. It's basically whatever you see on the screen, return me back a polygon for that threshold. So I'm going to give it a 3 hour duration ratio for the MRMS precip source, and it should return a polygon that's going to be all those polygons kind of stitched together. So to run the flash flood recommender, I just go to the tools button, and the interface for the flash flood recommender is going to be pretty much what you see in FFmpeg. all the source names and everything comes straight from FFmpeg, so you don't have to configure anything out of the box. It should just work with your existing FFmpeg localization. So I'm going to choose my QPE source. Again, there's the individual radars for legacy and dual pol, the dual pol Mosaic, but I'm going to choose MRMS QPE. I'm not doing the split window. There's a QPF source in FFmpeg, so you can do a 1 hour QPF plus the remaining hours of your duration is QPE. That's pretty advanced and kind of challenging to use, so we don't need to go there. If I was using a single source radar up here, then I would select which radar that is, but I'm using the Mosaic, so I don't have to. The guidance source is HazardServicesFlashFlood guidance. It could be the average recurrence intervals if I wanted it, but I am not going to go down the ARI path. If I look at the duration, I can do 1 hour, I think is the default, and it remembers what you ran the last time, so it's coming up with 3, but I'd probably change it from 1 to 3 in this instance because the 3-hour footprint is much greater than the 1-hour footprint, and you don't know that ahead of time until you actually look at the data, so this is an important part of the way the recommender is. The FFmpeg fields, you can again do QPE ratio or difference. I'm doing a 3-hour duration ratio of 100%, and I'm going to run it for the entire CWA, and we'll talk about these other options down here in a little bit. But I just click run, and it's going to go out and it compares the thresholds that I have to the FFmpeg data, and it's going to return me back a simple polygon or a complex polygon in some instances. If you do have any gaps in your data, you will get some messages about it. So this is useful to know that at the beginning of my event, it's what, 21:48. I had a gap of, looks like 14 minutes, which is just the beginning of the data set. So that makes sense to me that that's at the start of the data set, and we don't really need to worry about that. So what just happened? We got a number of events that were recommended, and they're kind of hard to see here. So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of my console, and I can see each one of these. I can click on my potential events that the recommender just provided, and it's going to jump to, there's one, there's another, and you see pretty much everywhere where there's purple or greater, it's stitched those together into one big polygon. So this is going to be my flash flood warning of interest. And if you look carefully, you'll see there's tons of vertices in there. We can't do tons of vertices in today's policy. So the 20-point vertice reduction really fundamentally limits what we're going to be able to do with the results of the recommender. I think in the future, when we're managing complex shapes and sending that over new product formats, then it'll be a different world. But until then, it's very difficult to work with hundreds and hundreds or thousands of vertices. There are drawing tools that you can use to tweak this, and I can just give you a taste of that. If I wanted to add to a freehand polygon to just increase this a bit, I can left click and hold and intercept part of that, and that's going to smooth out some of those polygons. But all this fine detail, if you try to work with it now, once you go to the 20-point reduction, and I can preview that with the update hazard hatched area toggle here, it's all going to be lost in the end because we're living in a very crude world. So it really doesn't pay off to be managing high-resolution polygons in today's policy, in today's world. So good tip, always preview your update hazard hatched area to get an idea of what the 20-point vertice reduction is going to do when you go on to create your text and send your product. All right, so I have my beginning flash flood polygon there, and one thing to notice is I'm going to turn back on my my product legends here. So I have 2 editable resources. I have the hazard services is editable, so I can manipulate my vertices like so. We don't need to be too cute with trying to have lots of detail in an environment that has a lot of convection upstream, so this footprint is quite likely to change over time. So I can interact with my vertices there. If I want to go in between Hazard Services and FFmpeg, FFmpeg has a couple of features with it that are useful. One is this click. I can make the click a downstream basin trace, so I can see where's the runoff going to be, and maybe expand my polygon downstream where the runoff is. In order to do that, I have to, let me show you the text legend over here. I see Hazard Services is editable. I need to make the FFmpeg editable in order to use the right clicks for FFmpeg. So that's just as it is today with WarnGen. It similarly is with Hazard Services, and any two resources that are editable, you have to always toggle between them, so that's a good thing to kind of point out here. So I can right click on this basin, and it's going to highlight the areas downstream, all the stream links, to show that most of the runoff is actually going to be to the south. So I probably want to drag my polygon down a couple of basins to the southwest on that portion of it. If I right click over here, we see that most of that runoff is north of Elk Ridge and then off to the east. So that looks to be a pretty sharp line in the accumulations right now, and the runoff certainly favors making a more of a hard line on that polygon edge compared to southwest. If I go over to the east side of this area that's exceeded flash flood guidance, we see that that drains off well to the east. So I probably want to expand it to the east a bit. If I go to the north side, we see that most of the runoff is from north to south. So I don't need to be expanding my polygon northward. I can have a nice sharp edge of that polygon, and then I need to be expanding my polygon further southwest. And then this is going to be the interesting area right in here, where once I go east of here, then I'm probably going to bring that back up. So in order to work with my Hazard Services being editable, I've got to middle click on my Hazard Services text legend to make it editable. And again, I middle click on that, or I can right click and make it editable. And I'm going to want to drag these vertices a little bit downstream. See if that's a little bit better. I can toggle that over here and show me that area. So that drainage is going down about here. So I think that's it's pretty good. I can go ahead and go back to my Hazard Services, and let me show you, just putting in a little bit of detail here. I can add a vertex or two and maybe bring this up a bit and leave Elk Ridge out, and then bring this down a bit. And we see that there's some complex stuff it does along the coastlines there that's always going to be a challenge, but at least the signal in the runoff was that this could drain further east. So I think that's about as much polygon modification that's warranted at this time. So I have my, that's what my FFmpeg is showing. If I turn back on my reflectivity to always keep my situation awareness for where are thunderstorms moving in from, we see that thread area, it's back building right over the western side of the polygon. And then the next area is actually coming in from the northwest. So this western part of the polygon looks like that's gonna fill in and probably expand out there. So having a little bit more aggressive area on that part of the polygon seems warranted. Now, once I've got my polygon set, I'm going to want to ask how much precip has fallen in there. That's going to be information I need to include in my warning. So I'm going to make my FFmpeg the editable resource here. And I can ask that question and get an answer pretty quickly with FFmpeg. I can just change my D2D display to be QPE and read off the color table. Shows that about 4 inches of rain has fallen here, 2 inches. So it's like 2 to 4 inches of rain has fallen over this polygon area as a way to characterize it over the last 3 hours. And only 1 to 2 has fallen on this other area upstream. So that's going to give me just a little bit of a reference point to include in my amounts. So when I selected my hazard, I'm in a pending state. My HID populates with the flash flood recommender suggested a flash flood warning because I was running the flash flood recommender. So I've got my area, I've got my type, my time. It defaulted to 6 hours. I'll just pattern this off what the office was doing that day. They started with 5, which again, for a very saturated environment with multiple rounds of thunderstorms coming over the area, I think that's going a little bit longer is warranted in this kind of situation. Then the default's usually 3. But we've got the IBW format, and at least for this first warning, we're going to go with just a general radar indicated. One of the interesting features of the IBW format in Hazard Services is it does have a basis location. So I can give the a marker as to where the basis is specified. So let me turn on my reflectivity and see. I've got storms that go from Clarksville to Ellicott City, and I think Baltimore is in there. Yeah, Baltimore. So that's a pretty good reference. So I'm going to say the basis being Clarksville to Ellicott City to Baltimore, and I run out of characters there, but I'll fix that once it gets to the product editor. So the rain so far, and that's what we just looked at, that so far we've had 2 to 4 inches has fallen over the last 3 hours, and there's also an additional rainfall. We can see that 1 to 2 inches is happening with that other line of storms that's going to move over that area. So I'm predicting that it's a pretty decent flash flood potential right now, but in another couple hours, that 1 to 2 inches could be over there, and then the totals that are going to be driving the real significant flash flooding are going to be more 3 to 6 inches. So I'll put in 3 to 6 inches, and that's going to be, we've had 2 to 4 and 3, and another 1 to 2 hours. It's going to be about 5 hours. So that's giving quite a bit of information about the rainfall amounts. So I'm going to select one call to action here and click preview. And if I look in my product editor, then I can edit the text in here. So Doppler radar indicated thunderstorms producing heavy rain in Clarksville. So I'm going to say heavy rain from Clarksville to Ellicott City to Baltimore. Between 2 to 4 inches of rain have fallen. Blah, blah, blah. Down near the bottom, additional 1 to 2. So let's check out what this formatted product would look like by clicking on the Formatter tab. So we see I've got a new FFW, and Doppler radar indicated thunderstorms producing heavy rain from Clarksville to Ellicott City to Baltimore. Between 2 to 4 inches of rain have fallen. Flash flooding is ongoing or expected to begin shortly. Again, this is the first warning, so we don't know yet. Additional rainfall of 1 to 2 inches are possible in the warned area, and the IBW tags give us radar indicated, and then the expected rainfall is 3 to 6 inches in 5 hours. So I just click issue all, and now I have an issued 344 FFW right there. I'm going to go ahead and remove all my potential events and rerun the recommender just to show you what happens if I run this a second time. If I just run it straight up without making any changes, it should give me exactly what we had before, which if I already have a polygon out, it gives me 3 hazards. Scroll down to the bottom, click on the first one. There's 1. Let me get the ratio back up for 3 hours so we can see that this does in fact match. There's that guy, and of course this guy, which if I toggle off my 344 that I just issued, then we see that there is a recommendation over that same area. So if you have a widespread flash flooding event and you've already got warnings out, you may not want to keep getting that same recommendation over and over. So there's a couple of tools that have been added to the flash flood recommender. One is there's an events to ignore option. So this is 344 was the main polygon here. So I'm going to right click and remove all potential events that were recommended by the recommender. And I can just scroll down here and look for, there's my hazard event ID 344. So I'm going to rerun this, and I'm going to exclude 344 polygons from being included. Now I only have 2 recommended hazards. Scroll down to the bottom, click on each one. There's mini polygon 1, mini polygon 2, and it did not give me a recommendation for this big polygon area because I asked for it to be excluded. So that's one of the features of the recommender that you'll see in the flash flood recommender. Another one, let me go ahead and right click and remove all potential events. Let's say I wanted to, if I had a widespread area with lots of pockets in it, let's say I just wanted to run it for one particular area. So I could use the user's defined area and then just left click on my display here. Let me make my hazard services editable, because again I've been going back and forth between that. Alright, so if I make my user defined area, I can draw a polygon and say recommend me over that area. Those thresholds over that area, I got one result, and there it is. My potential hazard right there. So you can see that the flash flood recommender has a number of different options. It's honestly really easy and quick and simple to use the drawing tools, and I think most people will gravitate towards that. It can give you back what you see in FFmpeg, but you have to know what you're looking for first, which if you're into FFmpeg, then that could be a natural extension of your workflow. If not, then maybe you can just kind of see that there's some tools in here that maybe the next generation of recommenders could build off of. This idea of having a user-defined area to run a recommender for, that's pretty powerful. This ignore events in being able to regenerate recommendations, that's a powerful kind of capability. There's also this combine hazards within a certain number of miles. So if you do have a lot of speckled polygons meeting your threshold and you're getting like 3 or 4 events maybe in one small area, you could increase this range to kind of collect all those separate polygons and have them be provided to you as one hazard event. Then when you preview your hazard, it's going to connect them all together. But that's just, normally people won't need to dial this feature up, but it's set at 10 miles. So basically any basins within 10 miles of each other that meet the criteria are going to be provided back in the recommendation. And if they're separate polygons, they'll be initially separate in the recommendation, but once you go to the 20-point vertice reduction, that all gets combined together, because we cannot have multiple polygons in our polygon issuance in today's policy. So hopefully that provided you just a little bit of perspective on the flash flood recommender. It's an FFmpeg based recommender. It's just as easy to manually draw it, but if you want it to provide back a beginning polygon based off of some thresholds, you can certainly do that.